Hello, everybody. I've been kind of pushing this review back for a while now. I hadn't gotten around to watching Studio 666 yet, but with the passing of Taylor Hawkins, I decided to go ahead and just rent it and watch it. So while it was in the back of my mind throughout the entire film, I did try to enjoy it for what it was, and I did. I thought it was pretty good. So join me as I review the movie Studio 666 and pay one last tribute to Taylor Hawkins. Hello everybody and welcome to Rudy and the Beast. I like to discuss music and such, and so this is kind of a mix. This is my review of the movie Studio 666 starring the Foo Fighters. So if you're interested, like and subscribe to the channel. And if you're not interested, like and subscribe anyway. It doesn't hurt. Now, the movie starts with Foo Fighters discussing their next album when a record executive, played by Jeff Garlin, kind of pressures them to hurry up and finish the record because they need something to sell. So Dave gets an idea to help him get the feel for the record and takes a page out of Jimmy Page's book and decides to rent a creepy old house for their 10th record, much like Led Zeppelin did with their 4th record. Now once they get there, shit kind of goes awry really quick. There's demons, there's blood, there's gore, and it's all a good time. Now I'll try not to spoil too much, but this is just a warning. If you haven't seen it, I might spoil some stuff. So go watch it first if you haven't yet. Now the first thing I noticed from the movie was during the opening credits, they mentioned John Carpenter created the theme song for the movie. Now I don't know how appreciated John Carpenter is nowadays, but back in the day he was a man. He's considered one of the greatest masters of horror films that there is, and he has quite the filmography under his belt. Again, if you haven't seen any of his movies, go check them out. Most of them didn't do well at first, but they became cult classics later. And the ones that did great, well, of course, they're great, like Halloween. But when I read his name, it really excited me, because he's one of my favorite directors of all time. And he's a great composer. His music really captures the feel of a scene, the suspense of it. It gives you chills almost like no other composer can, really, that I've heard anyway. Now right off the bat you can tell that this film did take some inspiration from those 70s and 80s horror films. There's a lot of scenes, at least in the beginning of the film, where it's slow paced and very suspenseful, much like a John Carpenter film. Now the guys aren't actors, and you could definitely tell, but that also added to the humor of the film. It was great seeing them try and act. Now Dave has the most acting, at least that I know of, under his belt, and it definitely shows. He is a little bit better than the rest of the band. Not that the others sucked or anything, but their reactions were kind of funny when it was supposed to be scary. I mean, it works though. Like when one of the guys is reacting to something scary, their face shows like, I'm supposed to be scared right now. Like, and we as the audience are like, oh, they're supposed to be scared right now. But at the same time, you're kind of like smirking because it's so not believable. But they collectively have enough charm to make it work. And I gotta say, Pat Smear was probably the worst out of them, and yet the most adorable. Every time he's on screen, it makes you want to smile because of how innocent and naive he seems to be. And he was definitely my favorite character in the film. Whitney Cummings, the comedian, she comes out in this. She plays a crazy neighbor and former groupie. and tries to befriend the band. After a while, she tries to warn the band, or the rest of the band anyway, that there's an evil that lurks around in the house. She's pretty funny as a crazy person, and it makes you laugh when she does things that are over the top. Like, for example, there's a scene where she's talking to them, and they're kind of just walking away, and then they give her one look back, and then she kind of just like scoots down behind a fence, and it's just like stupid and over the top, but it's funny. Will Forte, former SNL cast member, plays a delivery guy, and he gets starstruck when he realizes that he's delivering to the Foo Fighters. At one point, he tries to convince Dave to listen to his demo of his band called Bone Structure, and it's just so Will Forte. He's never let me down with any of his characters, and even though it's a small part, he really makes it funny. There's just something really goofy about how he tries to be serious in any role that he does, and you just can't, because his face and his tone of voice just kind of make it not serious. So I really loved his small part in the film. It was really great. Jeff Garlin, he is also a comedian. He plays a studio executive, and he's like a straight up asshole to the band. Now he usually plays like a similar character in other films. Like in Toy Story, he does kind of acts the same. It's like a little dickhead toy, but this time with a bunch of dick jokes and obscenities. I think their chemistries all worked pretty well together. Despite being from different backgrounds, everything kind of worked pretty great with him. There was a few cameos in this film. Carrie King, Lionel Richie, John Carpenter, and after the film was over, on the credits I read that Steve Vai does some guitar work, which was badass too. If you don't know who Steve Vai is, go check out Steve Vai. He'll blow your mind. Or watch that 80s movie, The Crossroads. Not the one with Britney Spears, the 80s one with the Karate Kid, Ralph Macchio. There's like a guitar duel with Steve Vai and Ralph Macchio. It's pretty famous, and it's epic as fuck. Now, Carrie King plays a roadie in the film, and they kind of treat him like shit. And it's funny because, like, I would never in my life think to treat Carrie King like shit. He looks like he'll fucking murder you in real life. But I'm pretty sure they go back years and years, and they've probably been buddies for decades already. But his scenes were absolutely hilarious. Lionel Richie plays himself, and there's a scene where he just comes, it's a quick cameo, he comes out and he gets mad at Dave for trying to use one of his songs. So Dave's kind of like trying to figure out what the next record's gonna sound like, so he starts playing one of Lionel Richie's songs, and he just comes out and he's like cursing at Dave, and just kind of being an asshole toward Dave. And it's funny because at least I've never heard anything bad about Lionel Richie, but I firmly believe that that's out of character for him. So it was cool to see him, kind of out of that nice guy that he always plays, or that he is. Now John Carpenter comes out real quick. He plays like a sound engineer. He's kind of mixing the record together. He has a couple of lines in the film, and I was just really surprised that he made a cameo. Besides playing or composing the main theme song, he also came out in the film, which I thought was really cool. To me, that tells me that the band really enjoys his work, and it was cool that he decided to be in the movie as well. This film was bloody. I mean, the opening scene alone shows more red than the communist Soviet Union back in the day. It was so bloody that at one point they cut it to black and white, kind of like Kill Bill. I don't know if they did it because of that to make it an R-rated film, but in Kill Bill they had to turn one scene black and white because there was too much blood. Well, that's the way I feel the opening scene was. They had to kind of cut it out to put the rest of the stuff in the film, because that opening scene is pretty nasty. Now, all the kills were brutal and they were fun, at least for a horror fan. Now, my top 3 deaths in the film are as follows. So, number 3, there's a part where Pat Smear, they're trying to escape in a van. He's trying to hotwire the van. He says that he knows how to do it the old-fashioned way. So he gets under the van, he pulls on some wires, and he's messing there, he's messing around. Finally, the van gets started, and as soon as it does, his head gets crushed by the tire. It's ridiculous, but it's both funny and horrific at the same time. Number 2 is, and I'm sorry, rest in peace, Taylor. It's Taylor Hawkins' death in the movie. So, after reluctantly recording the last track for the album that they're creating, Dave straight up murders Taylor. He grabs a cymbal and he chucks it at him like a frisbee or kung lao, and he splits his head right in half. And the top half of his head stays while the rest of his body kind of goes down real slow, and there's a trail of blood in it. It looks ugly. And that has to be one of the most original deaths I've seen on screen. And I think it was really badass that they did that. And number 1, so there's a scene where Rami and the crazy neighbor Samantha, they end up doing the monster mash. You know what I'm saying? Taking the old skin boat out to Tuna Town. Anyway, as they were bumping uglies, they get sawed in half by a chainsaw. She's laying down in bed. A chainsaw goes right through her mouth, right to Rami's mouth, and then it cuts them both in half while he was on top of her. It's fucking ugly and badass too. Overall, it was a great fun film, and one that's sure to end up in your collection, especially if you're a fan of the band. It's brutal, it's bloody, it's over the top, and it's great. But that's just my opinion. Did you watch the film? Did you like it? Please let me know. I want to know what you think. Now, as I said in the beginning, I heard of Taylor's passing yesterday. It was pretty sad that he passed away at 50 years old. I mean, he looked like he was still so full of energy, full of life. I mean, he was such a talented dude. His drumming was impressive, so was his singing. I never got to meet him, but he seemed like he was so cool and so fun to be around. And I think his peers agree. People from like Ozzy, Stevie Nicks, Flea, they've all kind of paid tribute and said some kind words about him and shared some stories. It makes you smile, and it also just makes you sad just knowing that he's no longer going to be around. But all I can say as a fan is rest in peace, man. Thank you for all the great tunes, and thank you for your contribution to rock and roll. Time to go on to that great gig in the sky, man.